Good morning. As Carla was mentioning earlier, it's interesting how life is what happens is, God, life. Suddenly I'm having one of those brain cramps. It's amazing how sometimes someone becomes a mother without, any prior planning. Of course, others, you give birth, but other times you take someone into your home because they don't have a mother. So anyone who has served in the role of mother, would you please stand and allow us to just acknowledge you? Thank you. I realized I was trying to conflate two phrases in my mind, but life is what happens to you when you're making other plans, that sort of thing. There was a woman named Anita who started thinking, being a mother of several children, all of the advice she gives her children on a daily basis. And so she decided to kind of look at what advice does the average mother give over a 24-hour period, and wanted to see if she can condense it into 3 minutes. And she set it to the tune of the William Tell Overture. Now, it's a little fast, but luckily it's captioned so you can catch all the words.
Get up out of bed, wash your face, brush your teeth, comb your sleepy head, here's your clothes and your shoes, hear the words I said. Get up now, get up and make your bed. Are you hot, are you cold, are you wearing that? Where's your books and your lunch and your homework at? Grab your coat and your gloves and your scarf and hat. Don't forget, you gotta feed the cat, eat your breakfast, the experts tell us it's the most important meal of all. Take your vitamins so you will grow up one day to be big and tough. Remember the orthodontist will be seeing you at 3 2. Don't forget your piano lesson is this afternoon, so you must play, don't shovel, choose slowly, but hurry, the bus is here, be careful, come back here. Did you wash behind your ears? Play outside, don't be rude. Would you just play fair? Be polite, make a friend. Don't forget to share. Work it out, wait your turn, never take a dare. Get along, don't make me come down there. Clean your room, fold your clothes, put your stuff away. Make your head do it now. Do you have all day? Were you born in a barn? Would you like some hay? Can you even hear what I say? Get off the phone. Don't sit so close, turn it down. No texting at the table. No more computer time tonight. Your iPod's my iPod if you don't listen up. Where you going and we're moving? What time do you think you're coming home? Say thank you, please, excuse me, makes you welcome everywhere you roam. You'll appreciate my wisdom someday when you're older and you're grown. Can't wait till you have a couple little children of your own. You'll thank me for the counsel I gave you so willingly, but right now I thank you not to roll your eyes at me. Close your mouth when you chew, we appreciate. Take a bite, maybe 2 of the stuff you hate. Use your fork, do not burp, or I'll set you straight. Eat the food I put up on your plate. Get an A, get a door, don't be smart with me. Get a grip, get in here, I'll count 2, 3. Get a job, get a life, get a PhD, get a goal. You're grounded until you're 36. Get your story straight and tell the truth for once, for heaven's sake. And if all your friends jumped off a cliff, which you jumped in, if I said it once, I've said at least 1,000 times before that you're all you act this way. It must be your father's DNA. Look at me when I am talking, stand up straighter when you walk a place for everything, and everything must be in place. Stop crying or I'll give you something real to cry about. Oh! Wash your face, put your PJs on, get in bed, say a prayer with Mom. Don't forget, I love you. And tomorrow we will do this all again because the months are better. You don't need the reason why. Because. I said so. I'm the mom, the mom. Ta-da!
That's posted on YouTube, as you can imagine. She actually has a sequel, because she said, how many people came up to me, well, what about dads? I mean, dads raise children too. And so she said she worked on it for some time, and she came up with a response. Ask your mom, ask your mom, ask your mom. Somehow it feels too familiar, right? As I've observed our evolution in society, especially with social media and how much we can comment on each other's actions, it's astounding how freely people feel it's okay for them to object. I think of just the things over this last year, and of course a couple weeks ago when I was on vacation, of course we had the riots in Baltimore, and of course there was the Baltimore slap mob. And it started a very valuable, discussion about what should be said and what should be done in a situation where you're disciplining a 16-year-old son. But what I notice in so many of these incidents is that people are filtering it through their own experience. I was listening to the radio, one guy's like, well, my mom hit me when I was a kid, and I turned out okay. That makes it okay. And of course, that's part of the problem, is we perpetuate some of the lessons we learned earlier in life. And when something does happen, or we see something, or a snippet of something on social media or on TV, our minds are amazing at how we assign a meaning to what happened. It's like our minds need to put everything in its right cubicle, or like you said, everything in its place. Because you've got to be able to classify everything. At least that's kind of our default setting. And Jesus actually had a teaching about this. Now, of course, Jesus lived in Israel 2,000 years ago. It was a time of oppression. They were occupied by the world superpower at the time, Rome. People were under great duress, and yet they were reaching out for meaning and spirituality. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the four Gospels, you know that things start in the one Gospel with John the Baptist at the River Jordan. Now, John the Baptist is, characterized as a man who lives a life. He's taken a vow of poverty. He's dressed in sackcloth, lives out in the wilderness, as there were some, groups and sects. So he's a hermit, but he would, preach at the River Jordan and baptize people. And that was the approach that some sects, S-E-C-T, took back then. Now, Jesus took more of the approach of, taking his message to the people. And I set that up because as we talk about this Bible verse that's coming up in a minute, we need to realize that it was interesting that both of these men were criticized for what they were doing. So in the Gospel of Luke, the 7th chapter, the 31st verse, Jesus is talking about just this sort of thing, the way people are perceiving and assigning meaning to things. And Jesus says, "To what then shall I compare the men of this generation? And what are they like? They are like children sitting in the marketplace and calling to one another, 'We sang music to you, and you did not dance. We wailed, and you did not weep. For John the Baptist has come, eating no bread and drinking no wine, and you say, this man is crazy. And the Son of Man has come eating and drinking, and you say, behold, he's a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Yet wisdom is justified by all of her children.'" Now, in unity, we can look at, say, the literal meaning of a passage, and then we'll look at the symbolism behind it. But, of course, like he says, isn't it interesting that some people, when they're happy, feel like everyone around them needs to be happy? Or when someone is really sad or depressed, they feel like everyone else around them should be sad or depressed. And is that really right? I mean, is it okay if I'm feeling sad that you're happy? Sure. And it's interesting, though, as you look at the John the Baptist and the Jesus comments here, the Son of Man. Unity's approach to the Bible is that every character represents something within us. Every male character represents our thinking nature. Every female represents our feeling nature. But these characters all are aspects of ourselves. Each of us has the power of faith and renunciation. You know, in the Gospel of Matthew, 5th chapter, 37th verse, Jesus says, rather than swearing by anything, just let your speech be yea, yea, or nay, nay. Or in common everyday language, it's like, let your speech be yes or no. And by that, it's whenever one of these events happens to us, whether it's the Baltimore riots or whatever, people look at it, and you have an opportunity to decide if this is you. Is this what you want to incorporate into your consciousness or not? So you have the opportunity to look at something and say, this is me. Yes, I accept this. Or you have the opportunity to say, no, this is not me. I don't accept this. The important thing is what's going on inside of you. It's your opportunity for spiritual growth, for to have a new awakening every day. And sometimes something will surface in us that's unpleasant, maybe a past memory or past experience. We have the opportunity once again to say, does this serve me anymore? Do I want to keep this within my consciousness? Or do I just want to have a memory of it without having the emotional attachment to it anymore? We encounter events, circumstances, and people when you have the opportunity for approval and acceptance or disapproval and rejection. It's part of our natural growth process. Let me give you some examples. Think of all of the events that have happened in your life and whether or not you have said yes or no to them. Health, sickness, happiness, unhappiness, pleasure, pain, companionship, loneliness. I realize I've experienced all of these things. You know, there have been times where I've said yes to these things. There have been times where I've said no to these things. So as we look at the symbolism there, it talks about how shall I compare the men of this generation. Men, thinking nature. New thoughts that surface are called children. A male child is a new thought. A female child is a feeling. So he mentions children, so this would be both thoughts and feelings. And the marketplace is any area of human existence or human experience in which there's a give and take, which is, most of them. So within ourselves, certain children thoughts pop up, and we find ourselves saying, well, I woulda, I coulda, I shoulda. And we're being rough on ourselves. And a lot of these experiences or these memories that rise in us are uncomfortable. They're unpleasant. But the key is do you recognize it as an opportunity for your own spiritual growth? Because if you don't, odds are you are going to project it onto somebody else or transfer it onto somebody else. And then you have the opportunity to accept or reject. But the problem is you're involving somebody else who probably has no inclination to do it. Now, there are other times where, we do the dance with each other so we can both heal the situation. If you're upset with me and I'm upset with you, it's a good idea we get together and just kind of compare notes. What's going on here? But you see, like I said, with social media especially, there's a sense of detachment. I think of some of the stories where someone has made what seemed to be an innocent post or posted a nice picture on Instagram, and suddenly everybody's criticizing, you're too fat, you're too skinny, you're too this, you're too that. And it's kind of like, who asked you? Right? But it's people projecting their stuff onto the situation. Now let me be clear. As with our momisms, as you're raising a child, or if you see a situation that's putting people in danger, if harm might come to someone, or we have a menacing situation, you want to intervene and point out what's going on. But when we complain or object to others that aren't meeting our preferences, especially when there's been no personal agreement between the two that you would hold each other accountable, is it really a healthy situation? We have a right to object, and we all should sometimes object to a situation. But are we objecting more than we are affirming? Are we objecting or criticizing more than we are praising? Do we like being surrounded by a person who complains all the time? I remember when I started out in college in 1974, I met a fellow, and the first evening we were in a group of people. He was complaining all evening, and I just made this mental note: this guy's a complainer. I don't want to hang around with him. Well, he turned out to join the same fraternity that I did, and I got to hang around with him for 4 years. And I saw him last year at our 40th reunion. And what happened was he was just in a bad mood that night. Luckily, he turned out to be a very funny, very enjoyable guy. In fact, he just retired from the FBI at age 57 because that's the requirement. And he's a dead ringer for J.K. Simmons. But his dad was in the CIA, and sure, he went out in the Marines and then went into the FBI himself. So when I observe someone or something that isn't according to my preferences, what I do and what I've learned over time to do is to just take it into my intuition. What is mine to do and what is mine not to do? What is mine to say and what is mine not to say? There are times, and especially I keep in mind as a minister too, there are times for coaching, but there are also times for just letting it go. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make the horse drink. So I allowed, Charles Fillmore, one of our founders, said, I take it to headquarters, the intuition, run it by God. Say, okay. And, yet wisdom is justified by all of her children, the last line in that Bible verse. We all have the wisdom, and we all have the justification, if indeed within us it's called to, that it is ours to say. But if not, because we're just trying to feel right, or we're trying to feel superior to someone else, it's not all that healthy a situation. We can't build another person up by tearing them down. In fact, we build ourselves up by building other people up. So why would Jesus call our attention to this? Why was this recorded in 2 of the Gospels? I read you with one from Luke. There are 2 reasons, and one is that we do block the flow of this divine energy that can flow through us. When we constrict. The other aspect of it is we can actually spring leaks in that flow. We find ourselves draining a lot of the energy that is ours to be able to move across. I wanted to have Jesse put up a slide on nonviolent communication. Carla and I had a chance to hear Marshall B. Rosenberg when we were in Unity Seminary. Marshall actually just passed away recently. But he came up with the concept of nonviolent communication. This man, for 50 years of his adult life, was an arbiter, and he was renowned around the world. It seems like he could go into a situation that just seemed could not be solved, and he would have a way of connecting the people involved to come to some sort of a solution or an agreement. So you can actually find his book, Nonviolent Communication. And there are 4 components to it. And the idea behind this is, can you communicate with another person without putting them on the defensive? So the first thing to do is observe what you see happening and state exactly what you are observing. In other words, you don't put any spin on it either way. The second one is to express how you're feeling with what you're observing. And then after that, you express what it is that's your need. And this is the key. I find time and time again, conflict can be a very healthy thing provided we're both ready to be honest about what it is we need. What is our unmet need in this situation? A lot of times people are unconscious to that. So it takes a little bit of fishing, but it takes us just being willing to go within once again and what is it that I'm trying to heal here in this interaction? So what's your need? Then after that, make a request of what you'd like to see happen. Now that person has the right to say yes or no to it. So for example, let's say I've got an appointment with someone at 10 o'clock, 10:05, 10:10, person's still not there. 10:15 rolls around, person still hasn't arrived. Finally, the guy walks in at 10:20. Now, I could say, what the hell are you doing? Or you've got some nerve. Would that put the person on the defensive? Yeah. But if I use this model, I would say, I observed that we had a 10 o'clock meeting and you've arrived at 10:20. My feeling. This makes me feel like you're not valuing my time. It makes me feel frustrated, makes me feel sad. My needs. I have a need to have order in my life on a daily basis. If we set an appointment at 10, I might have another appointment at 10:30 or at 11. And then I express my request, and my request is, are you willing, the next time we meet, to be here on time or at least call me by that time to let me know that you're running late? You see how much more effective that is than, what the hell are you doing? So, in the book Nonviolent Communication, he gives a couple of interesting examples. One is a teacher, a special education teacher, said she was actually using this with school children, and they would absorb it. Teacher from Chicago, Illinois says, I have been using nonviolent communication in my special education classroom for about 1 year. It can work with children who have language delays, learning difficulties, and behavioral problems. One student in our classroom spits, swears, screams, and has stabbed other students with pencils when they get near his desk. So I cue him. He immediately stands up straight now, looks at the person towards whose anger is directed, and says calmly, would you please move away from my desk? I feel angry when you stand so close to me. The other student can respond. Normally they say something like, sorry, I forgot that it bothers you. And Marshall Rosenberg, as I mentioned, has been parachuted into several situations that seemed intractable. He shared in Nonviolent Communications on page 13, I was presenting nonviolent communication in a mosque at a Dahisha refugee camp in Bethlehem. About 170 Palestinian Muslim men were there. Attitudes towards Americans at the time were not favorable. As I was speaking, I suddenly noticed a wave of muffled commotion go across the audience, and my translator whispered to me, they now know that you're American. A man jumped to his feet and yelled, murderer! Suddenly a dozen other men jumped up and said, assassin, child killer, murderer! Fortunately, I was able to focus my attention on what the man was feeling and needing. In this case, I had some cues. On the way into the refugee camp, I noticed several tear gas canisters that had been fired into the camp by the Israelis the night before. Stamped on each one of these canisters was made in the USA. I knew that the refugees harbored a lot of anger towards the U.S. for supplying tear gas and, of course, other weapons to Israel. So I addressed the man who had called me a murderer. Are you angry because you would like my government to use its resources differently? Now he notes in parentheses here, I didn't know whether my guess would be correct, but what was critical was that I made an attempt to understand what he was feeling. You're damn right I'm angry. You think we need tear gas? We need sewers. Not your tear gas. We need housing. We need to have our own country. Marshall responded, so you're furious and would appreciate some support in improving your living conditions and gaining political independence. The man answered, do you know what it's like to live here for 27 years, the way I have with my family, my children? Have you got the faintest idea what it's like for us? And Marshall said, sounds like you're feeling very desperate and you're wondering whether I or anyone else can really understand what it's like to be living under the conditions you're living. You want to understand? Tell me. Do you have children? Do they go to school? Do they have playgrounds? My son is sick. He plays in open sewage. His classroom has no books. Have you ever seen a school that had no books? I hear how painful it is for you to raise your children here. You'd like me to know that what you want is what all parents want for their children: a good education, opportunity to play and grow in a healthy environment. That's right, the basics. Human rights. Isn't that what you Americans are always saying you want? Why don't more of you come over here and see what kind of human rights you're bringing here? So you'd like more Americans to be aware of the enormity of the suffering here and to look more deeply at the consequences of our political actions. Marshall then notes, our dialogue continued with him expressing his pain for 20 more minutes. I was listening for the feeling and the need behind each statement. I didn't agree or disagree with any of his statements. I received his words not as an attack, but as a gift from a fellow human being willing to share his soul and his deep vulnerabilities with me. Once the gentleman had felt heard and felt understood, he was able to hear me as I explained my purpose for being at the camp. An hour later, this man invited me, the man who called me a murderer, invited me to his own home with his family for a Ramadan dinner. This is not an easy technique to use. I learned it in seminary, and I use it a lot, but there are other times where I forget. And I'll, what the hell are you doing? Rather than, say, that's not really the way I want to show up. But I'm getting better at it. But the key here again is recognize that everyone in this world can be a mirror to you. And sometimes it is the very, and I remember specifically there was one boss, of course he's passed away now, at WMAQ All News Radio in Chicago. And after just feeling that he was a pain in the ass for a year, I recognized that the problem was that I saw a lot of the same characteristics that I had in him. And so it was that sense of like, I don't really want to be this way. I really don't. And so it was much easier for me to transfer it to him rather than to deal with my own stuff back then. So when something does arise in your life, ask, take it into headquarters, your intuition, say, what is mine to do here? What is mine not to do? What is mine to say? What is mine not to say? And consider getting the book Nonviolent Communications by Marshall Rosenberg. Our closing story is a 3-minute video of a very special mother and a woman from Hope for Wildlife Foundation who facilitated a very special adoption.
She had a mama deer who's been calling for her baby and for the last 3 days hasn't had one.
The mother's still here, looking for her baby.
So we know we have a mom with no baby, but we have lots of babies. We thought we would try our first ever fostering attempt. I'm gonna take her in the box to there and then open the box. Maybe she'll be helpful and cry on the way.
Nobody knows what happened to the mother's fawn, but predators like bobcats and coyotes can easily take a young deer. Katie's going to see if she'll accept a foster fawn as her own.
We've never done this before. We've always had babies with no moms, and we place the babies and hope that the mom comes. We've never had a mom, and we have the baby. I don't want you to run away.
Will the mother fawn foster this baby? Will the baby believe it's her mother? In the shelter of the tall grass, something very special happens.
She was stomping. She was like telling the baby to come, get over here. And she went right to her. And the baby immediately started nursing.
From the Gospel of John, chapter 13, 34th verse. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you. May you always be open to God's guidance and grace. It is now time for our tithes and offerings. So if you're going to be giving cash or checks today, go ahead and just take it and hold it in your hands. If you use the Donate tab on unityofindy.com, just hold the amount that you're giving electronically. And open your heart and pour love into it. Make your donation or tithes today a true love offering. Then let's say the affirmation together on the screen. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I give, all that I receive, and I am grateful.
Inner peace out, let your inner peace out. Inner peace out, let your inner peace out. When I was a little boy, my grandma said to me, now there's just no use getting upset. You gotta learn how to just be calm, cool, collected, and remember to let things roll off your back. She said it's just no good to go through life constantly on the attack. And then she'd say, to brighten my day now, don't just sit and pout. When you've had enough, you find something you love, and then you let your inner peace out. Inner peace out, let your inner peace out. Inner peace out, let your inner peace out. Later, when I had a job, things were going fine until some workplace bully tried to get inside my mind. He tried to make me think I would never be someone to be proud of. I tried to remember my grandma's words, but my buttons he started to shove. I started seeing red. The voices in my head said, he's about to make you shout. So I took a breath again, counted to 10, and then I let my inner peace out. Inner peace out, let your inner peace out. Inner peace out, let your inner peace out. Don't focus on what you don't want, don't focus on the fear. When love and joy are your best friends, you've always got your inner peace near. The world may try to tear you down and fill your heart with doubt. Just let the doubt pass, kick it in the rear, and then you let your inner peace out. Inner peace out, let your inner peace out. Inner peace out, let your inner peace out. Now, I don't claim to be perfect. Nothing from you. But I do the best I can, and it always helps for me to remember my grandma's plan. When there is someone who is bent on making me feel bad, or something that just happens to me that winds up making me mad, then it's time for me to look and see what good I can bring about. I choose meditation. confrontation. And then I let my inner peace out, inner peace out. Let your inner peace out, inner peace out. Let your inner peace out, inner peace out. Let your inner peace out, inner peace out. Just let your inner peace out.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Mike. A couple quick reminders as I ask the usher.
We can never know the journey of another soul, so we should accept them. We should accept them, yes. We can never know the journey of another soul, so we must accept them. We must accept them as they are. You can never know the journey of another soul, so please accept me. Please accept me. Oh, you can never know the journey of another soul, so please accept me. Please accept me as I am. I do what's best as I perceive it. I live my life as I believe it. I realize I can never see more than God will reveal to me. I know that I have to strive to find and live my highest life, and so I have to see the same in you. Oh, I can never know the journey of another soul, so I will accept you. I will accept you, yes. I can never know the journey of another soul, so I do accept you. I do accept you as you are. As I perceive it, I live my life as I believe it. I realize I can never see more than God will reveal to me. I know that I have to strive to find and live my highest life, and so I have to see the same in you. Oh, I can never know the journey of another soul, so I will accept you. I will accept you, yes. I can never know the journey of another soul, so I do accept you. I do accept you as you are. We should accept them. We must accept them as they are. Please accept me. I ask you to accept me